The Habsburgs, a name that conjures images of glittering palaces, vast empires, and power that shaped centuries of European history. But beneath the polished marble and whispered diplomacy lay a darker, more visceral truth. These rulers, accustomed to absolute dominion, extended their control not just over people and lands, but over nature itself. Their hunting parties were not mere excursions. They were colossal, blood-soaked spectacles, meticulously planned theatrical events where entire forests were reshaped and thousands of lives extinguished for sport. From the gilded cages that held thousands of wild creatures to the armies of beaters who drove terrified animals into killing fields, these were displays of unimaginable wealth, and brutal might forget what you think you know about royal pastimes. The reality was far more shocking. Number 7. The Grand Imperial Drive at Lanzenkirchen. The year was 1679, and Emperor Leopold I was a man who understood the language of power. He knew it wasn't just spoken in decrees or treaties, but in displays of overwhelming force and boundless wealth. His hunting parties were less about tracking a wily stag and more about staging a glorious, gruesome ballet of death, all to impress his court and visiting dignitaries. The Grand Imperial Drive at Lanzenkirchen was one such event, a monumental undertaking that swallowed up vast sums of the imperial treasury and countless hours of human labor. For months before the scheduled date, the preparations had been underway. The chosen site, a sprawling area near Lanzenkirchen, was transformed. Hundreds of peasants, compelled by imperial decree, were drafted into service. Their task was not to farm, but to build. They erected enormous wooden fences, stretching for miles, creating a labyrinthine system of enclosures that would funnel wild animals towards a central killing arena. These fences, some reaching 12 feet high, were reinforced with branches and netting designed to be escape-proof. It was said that the wood alone consumed entire small forests, stripped bare to fuel the emperor's passion. The next phase was the most critical. Gathering the prey desired not dozens but thousands of animals. Imperial gamekeepers and their teams fanned out across the vast imperial hunting grounds, working tirelessly to capture and herd everything from red deer and wild boar to roe deer, foxes, and hares. They used nets, pits, and expertly trained dogs, gradually pushing the bewildered creatures towards the Lanzenkirchen enclosures. Reports from the time, like those found in the court chronicles of Johann Peter von Velden, described the bizarre sight of entire populations of animals being methodically driven, sometimes for weeks, towards their destined killing ground. Imagine the lowing of hundreds of deer, the squeals of frantic boars, the rustling of countless smaller creatures, all herded like livestock into the specially constructed pens. By the day of the hunt, the central arena was a scene of controlled chaos. It was a vast circular enclosure, perhaps a quarter-mile in diameter, with a raised platform in the center. This platform, draped in rich tapestries and adorned with imperial banners, was where the emperor and his most favored guests would stand. Surrounding the platform at strategic intervals were smaller, elevated shooting stands, reserved for other high-ranking nobles. Below, the outer fences contained a terrified mass of animals packed in like sardines, waiting for the gates to open. The morning dawned crisp and clear. Carriages bedecked with gold and velvet began arriving from Vienna, carrying the crème de la crème of the Habsburg court. Archdukes and archduchesses, foreign ambassadors, influential counts and countesses, all descended upon Lanzenkirchen, dressed in their finest hunting attire, though little actual hunting skill would be required. This day, servants in livery bustled about offering champagne and delicate pastries. Musicians played festive fanfares, their brass instruments glinting in the sunlight. The air, despite the underlying tension of the penned animals, was filled with an almost carnival-like atmosphere. When Emperor Leopold I finally arrived, a hush fell over the assembled crowd. He was a man of medium height, known for his solemn demeanor and his magnificent wig. He ascended the central platform, bowing slightly to his guests, his face set in an expression of serious anticipation. With a wave of his hand, the signal was given. The gates to the outer pens were slowly opened. A wave of terrified animals surged into the main arena. The ground trembled under the hooves of hundreds of deer, the snorting of boars, the desperate scampering of foxes and hares. Dust billowed momentarily, obscuring the view. Then the shooting began. It was not a hunt in the traditional sense, but a firing squad. The Emperor, armed with multiple ornate hunting rifles, took aim. His guests followed suit. The boom of firearms echoed across the plain, a continuous deafening roar that lasted for hours. Animals fell everywhere. Some tried to scale the high fences, only to be met with another volley of shots. Others ran in confused circles, tripping over their fallen brethren. The sheer volume of fire was staggering. Reloading was done by a team of dedicated gun bearers, ensuring the Emperor and his nobles never had to pause their deadly sport. Chroniclers of the time, such as those whose notes are preserved in the Imperial Library archives, speak of the ground becoming slick with blood, the air heavy with the smell of gunpowder and gore. The hunt continued until the vast majority of the penned animals lay still. Estimates from various historical records suggest that over 2,000 animals were killed on this single day, a truly staggering number. It was a massacre, pure and simple, but one dressed in the finest silks and accompanied by aristocratic laughter. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, signaling the end of the slaughter, a new phase of the event began. Teams of butchers who had been waiting patiently moved in to process the enormous piles of carcasses. The meat, much of it, would be distributed to the poor, a charitable gesture that served as a convenient justification for the mass killing. But the true purpose was clear, a display of unchallengeable power and total control over life and death. The evening brought a magnificent outdoor banquet. Long tables laden with silver platters and crystal goblets were set up amidst a backdrop of the now silent, blood-soaked arena. Delicacies from every corner of the empire were served. Roasted pheasant, elaborate fish dishes, mountains of fresh fruit, and rivers of wine orchestras played lively tunes. Torchbearers illuminated the scene, casting flickering shadows on the faces of the feasting nobles. They ate and drank their conversations, punctuated by the occasional proud retelling of a particularly successful shot. The Grand Imperial Drive at Lanzenkirchen was not just a hunt. It was a carefully choreographed demonstration of Imperial might, a Baroque masterpiece of destruction. It showed the world that the Habsburg Emperor not only ruled his vast dominions, but could bend nature itself to his will, transforming a living landscape into a stage for his deadly entertainment. It was a spectacle of opulence and brutality, a chilling testament to the unchecked power of a bygone era. Number 6. The Imperial Fox Hunt at Schönbrunn. The year is 1765. The setting is the magnificent Schönbrunn Palace, the summer residence of the Habsburgs. Empress Maria Theresia, a pragmatic and powerful ruler, might not have shared the same fanatical hunting passion as some of her male predecessors, but she understood the importance of courtly rituals and the impression they made. Her fox hunts at Schönbrunn were less about raw kill counts and more about refined spectacle, an elegant dance between aristocracy and nature, albeit with a predetermined outcome. Preparations for these events began weeks in advance, though on a different scale than the mass slaughter drives of Leopold I. Here the emphasis was on precision and aesthetics. Special teams of gamekeepers would capture a select number of red foxes from the imperial forests. These animals were then carefully kept in large purpose-built enclosures near the palace, ensuring they were healthy and active. Ready for their part in the grand performance, the idea was not to exterminate, but to provide a chase. The Schönbrunn gardens themselves were part of the stage. The sprawling Baroque landscape with its perfectly manicured lawns, sculpted hedges, and elaborate fountains was a marvel of human design. For a fox hunt, certain paths would be cleared, specific areas designated for the chase, and vantage points subtly created for the viewing pleasure of the non-participating guests. Records from the Imperial Garden Directorate show detailed plans for these events. outlining how the terrain would be managed to ensure a good run for the foxes and an exciting pursuit for the riders. The day of the hunt dawned with a buzz of activity. Guests, numbering in the hundreds, began to arrive from Vienna, dressed in their finest hunting regalia. For the ladies, this meant elaborately tailored riding habits, often in vibrant colors like emerald green or deep crimson, adorned with gold braid and elegant hats topped with feathers. The gentlemen wore equally resplendent outfits, often with intricate embroidery and polished leather boots. It was a fashion show as much as a sporting event. The Empress Maria Theresia herself would emerge from the palace, often accompanied by her children, including the young Archduke Joseph, already showing signs of his future reforming spirit. She was a woman of formidable presence even in her riding habit, which was always practical yet impeccably styled. Her arrival was met with a flurry of bows and curtsies, a testament to her authority and grace. Before the hunt began, a lavish hunt breakfast was served in one of the palace's ornate reception rooms. Tables groaned under the weight of crystal dishes filled with delicate pastries, fresh fruit, smoked meats, and an array of cheeses. Silver teapots steamed, and coffee, a relatively new luxury, was poured into porcelain cups. Conversations flowed freely, punctuated by polite laughter and the clinking of silverware. It was a chance for social maneuvering, for alliances to be subtly formed, and for the latest court gossip to be exchanged. When the Empress gave the signal, the hunting party moved outside. The air was filled with the eager yelps of the Imperial hunting hounds, a specialized breed, known for their speed and stamina. These dogs, carefully trained for generations, were an integral part of the spectacle, their baying adding to the drama of the chase. Huntsmen, dressed in the distinctive green and gold livery of the Imperial hunt, held the leashes, their faces alert and focused. The foxes were then released from their temporary enclosures. The goal was not an immediate kill, but a stimulating chase across the manicured grounds. Riders astride their powerful horses followed the hounds, galloping across lawns and through designated pathways. It was a test of horsemanship as much as anything else. The sight of dozens of riders, their colorful habits flashing against the green backdrop of Schönbrunn, the hounds in full cry, and the nimble foxes darting through the landscape must have been truly captivating. According to the memoirs of Countess Wilhelmine Kinsky, a frequent attendee at these events, the Empress herself was a competent rider, often keeping pace with the younger members of the court. She enjoyed the exercise and the fresh air, finding it a welcome respite from the endless paperwork and political maneuvering of her daily life. The chase could last for an hour or more, covering a significant portion of the vast Schönbrunn grounds, circling back towards the palace several times. The conclusion of the hunt was often as choreographed as its beginning. When a fox was eventually cornered by the hounds, it was not always killed on the spot by a hunt. Sometimes, for the sake of the spectacle, the fox would be swiftly dispatched by a huntsman, or even, on occasion, recaptured for future hunts. The Empress preferred a clean, efficient end to the chase, avoiding prolonged suffering if possible, a small concession to a more enlightened approach compared to her predecessors. The emphasis was on the pursuit, the thrill of the chase, rather than the bloody tally. After the hunt, the entire party would reassemble at the palace for another grand repast. Often a more formal dinner, the conversation would be dominated by enthusiastic accounts of the day's ride, near misses, and daring leaps over low hedges. The evening would conclude with a musical performance, or a game of cards, allowing the Empress to interact informally with her guests, reinforcing social bonds and demonstrating the grandeur of her court. The Imperial fox hunt at Schönbrunn was a testament to Maria Theresia's reign, orderly, grand, and always purposeful. It was a less barbaric affair than some of the earlier Habsburg hunting spectacles, but no less extravagant. It showcased the wealth and sophistication of the Habsburg court, demonstrating their mastery not only over their vast empire, but also over the very landscapes they inhabited, bending nature to their will for the pleasure and prestige of their imperial family. It was a display of power meticulously wrapped in the guise of elegant sport and refined entertainment. Number 5. The winter stag hunt on the frozen lake. The year is 1726, and Emperor Charles VI, father of Maria Theresia, held court. Charles was a true connoisseur of the Baroque spectacle, and his passion for hunting was immense. He loved to combine sport with theatricality, and few events epitomized this better than his legendary winter stag hunts, particularly those held on frozen lakes, a truly audacious undertaking that defied the harshness of the season. To host a massive hunt on ice meant overcoming immense logistical challenges. Months before the winter frosts were expected to set in, Imperial engineers and hundreds of laborers would begin preparations on a chosen lake, often one of the larger artificial lakes on an imperial estate near Vienna. Like those found at Luxembourg or March, their primary task was to ensure the ice would be thick and stable enough to support not just men but horses, sleighs, and even specially constructed hunting pavilions. Before the deep freeze, certain areas of the lake bed were cleared, and in some documented cases, artificial structures like small islands or raised platforms were built beneath the water's surface, designed to provide an anchor for temporary wooden structures. Once the ice formed, as winter arrived and the lake began to freeze, a dedicated ice monitoring team would continuously measure the thickness, sometimes even reinforcing weaker areas by pouring more water onto the surface to freeze in layers. Chronicles, such as the detailed accounts found in the court gazettes of the time, described the meticulous care taken, often involving divers working in freezing conditions, to inspect the ice from below. Once the ice was deemed safe, the true transformation began. Elegant hunting pavilions, temporary structures often adorned with gilded columns and draped in velvet, were erected directly on the ice. These pavilions served as warm retreats for the emperor and his most esteemed guests, providing shelter from the biting winter wind. They were heated with large ornate stoves and furnished with comfortable chairs and tables laden with refreshments. Paths across the ice were cleared of snow, sometimes even sanded for better traction, and marked with torches and banners. The stags themselves were a crucial part of the spectacle, instead of driving wild stags from the forests, which would be impractical and less controllable in deep snow and ice. A number of magnificent red deer, specially bred and carefully managed on the imperial estates, were selected. These stags, with their impressive antlers, were accustomed to human presence, making them ideal for the controlled environment of an ice hunt. They were brought to the lake just before the hunt, often transported in large covered carts. The day of the hunt was a scene of breathtaking beauty, yet underlying it was the chilling reality of what was to unfold. Distinguished guests, wrapped in furs and heavy brocades, arrived in ornate sleighs, their horses' breath steaming in the crisp air. The jingling of sleigh bells filled the silence, mixing with the muffled crunch of footsteps on snow and ice. The entire court, including ladies and gentlemen, was expected to attend, making it a grand social event that defied the cold. Emperor Charles VI, often dressed in a luxurious fur-lined coat, would lead the procession onto the ice. He would take his position in one of the central pavilions, or sometimes participate directly, riding in a specially designed sturdy sleigh pulled by strong horses. His preference, according to the diaries of his chamberlain, Count Kinsky, was for a hunt that was both exhilarating and visually stunning. The stags were then released onto the vast expanse of the frozen lake. Their powerful hooves, accustomed to forest terrain, struggled for purchase on the slippery ice. This element added a unique challenge for the animals and a novel spectacle for the observers. Instead of a rapid chase, the hunt often involved a more deliberate pursuit. Huntsmen on skates, a novelty at the time, sometimes assisted in guiding the dogs who also found the ice. The emperor and his chosen companions would then pursue the stags, often from their sleighs or on foot if conditions allowed, using specially adapted firearms. The sounds of the hunt were different from those in a forest. The gunshots echoed with an eerie clarity across the frozen surface. The cries of the hounds, initially excited, sometimes became frustrated as they slipped and slid. The sight of powerful stags, their breath pluming in the frigid air, desperately trying to gain traction, must have been a peculiar and captivating tableau. The objective was usually to dispatch the stags cleanly, often with a single well-aimed shot, touting the emperor's skill. Historical records suggest that perhaps a dozen or so stags were typically killed during such an event, a far cry from the thousands of the Lanzenkirchen drives, but still a significant number, given the difficulty of the terrain. After the hunt concluded, the stags were brought before the emperor for the traditional cure, where the animals were formally presented. This was followed by an opulent outdoor feast, despite the cold. Long tables, fashioned from ice blocks or sturdy wood, were set up near the pavilions. Hot food transported in insulated containers from the palace kitchens was served on heated platters. Think roasted game, hearty stews, and warming spiced wines. Braziers filled with glowing coals were strategically placed to provide warmth, and servants circulated with fur blankets for the guests. The sheer audacity of hosting such a lavish event on a frozen lake underscored Charles VI's desire to showcase his dominion over nature and his boundless resources. It was a display of imperial might that transcended mere hunting. It proved that the Habsburgs could turn even the most inhospitable conditions into a stage for their opulent entertainment. The winter stag hunt on the frozen lake was not just a hunt. It was a triumph of engineering, a spectacle of grandeur, and a powerful assertion of imperial will, leaving an indelible impression on all who witnessed it. Number 4. The night boar hunt with torches. The late 17th century saw Emperor Leopold I in his prime, and his thirst for dramatic spectacle was nowhere more evident than in his audacious night boar hunts. They were dangerous, thrilling, and designed to amplify the drama of the chase and the kill, transforming a nocturnal forest into a terrifyingly beautiful arena, illuminated by the flickering glow of hundreds of torches. The planning for a night boar hunt was incredibly complex. Wild boars, known for their ferocity and intelligence, were a formidable adversary even in daylight. At night, their danger increased exponentially. For months, imperial gamekeepers would identify areas of dense forest known to harbor large populations of wild boar. Often, on estates like those around Pressbaum or Lines, these areas would then be systematically managed. Artificial feeding stations might be established to draw the boars to specific locations, and those for a full drive might be subtly erected to guide the animals towards a designated killing zone. The crucial element of these hunts was light. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of torches were prepared. These were not just simple sticks with rags. They were elaborate, long-burning contraptions, often infused with resins to produce a brighter, more lasting flame. Teams of foresters and servants were tasked with their placement. They would be arranged in strategic patterns, lining pathways, encircling clearings, and outlining the designated hunting area. When lit, they would create an otherworldly glow, casting dancing shadows and illuminating the dark forest in a way that was both mesmerizing and unsettling. On the appointed evening, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Guests, dressed in darker, more practical, yet still luxurious hunting attire, would arrive at dusk. The usual hunt breakfast was replaced by a hearty early supper, ensuring the participants were well fortified for the long, cold night ahead. The air would be filled with the nervous energy of the hounds, eager and restless, straining against their leashes, their low growls adding to the primal intensity. Emperor Leopold I, often accompanied by his closest companions, would begin the proceedings. The initial phase involved the Treibjagd or drive. A large number of beaters, often local peasants, pressed into service, would form a vast human chain, armed with long poles and making a tremendous racket with shouts, drums, and horns. They would systematically move through the dense undergrowth, flushing the wild boars from their lairs. The goal was to funnel these dangerous animals towards the torchlit clearings, where the emperor and his hunting party waited. As the beaters advanced, the first sounds of the approaching boars would ripple through the night. The crashing of underbrush, the snapping of twigs, and the occasional angry grunt. The torches, now fully lit, cast long shifting shadows, turning familiar trees into grotesque figures. The air, according to the observations of Baron Georg von Klesberg, a courtier who recorded his experiences, was thick with the scent of pine needles, damp earth, and the faint musky smell of the agitated boars. When the boars finally burst into the torch-lit clearings, the scene must have been truly unforgettable. Their eyes, reflecting the torchlight, would glow ominously. Their tusks, sharpened and formidable, were a stark reminder of their power. The hounds unleashed would plunge into the fray, their barks turning into frenzied yelps as they engaged the dangerous animals. The hunters, positioned strategically, would then begin their grim work. The hunt itself was far more dangerous than the controlled drives or even the elegant fox hunts. Boars, especially wounded ones, were known to charge hunters, inflicting grievous injuries with their tusks. The low visibility, despite the torches, added another layer of peril. The emperor and his nobles would aim for clean, swift kills, but the chaos of the moment often led to prolonged struggles. The sounds of the hunt were intense. The sharp crack of muskets, the snorting and squealing of the boars, the baying of the hounds, and the shouts of the huntsmen. Sometimes, for added drama, a specially trained sophon, or boar sticker, armed with a long, heavy spear, would be allowed to engage a boar in close combat, bringing the danger and skill of the kill into sharp relief for the spectators. These were incredibly brave or foolhardy individuals, and their exploits were often lauded by the court. After the primary drive, smaller groups of hunters might venture deeper into the torchlit forest, tracking individual boars that had evaded the initial drive. The flickering light and the ominous sounds of the forest at night created an atmosphere of primal excitement, blurring the lines between sport and survival. Records from the Imperial huntmasters indicate that dozens of boars could be killed during a single night hunt, a testament to both the number of animals driven and the sustained effort of the hunters. As the pre-dawn light began to break through the trees, signaling the end of the hunt, the scene would be one of exhaustion and triumph. The carcasses of the boars, large and imposing even in death, would be gathered. The weary hounds would be brought back, and the beaters would be dismissed. A hearty breakfast, featuring fresh game from the night's kill, would be served back at a nearby hunting lodge, allowing the participants to recount their adventures and toast their successes. The night boar hunt with torches was more than just a hunt. It was a carefully orchestrated drama, a Gothic spectacle that highlighted the bravery of the Imperial hunters and the formidable power of the Habsburg monarchy. It was a thrilling, dangerous ballet performed under the cover of darkness, where the control of man over nature was asserted in the most primal and visually striking way, leaving an indelible mark on the memories of those who dared to participate. Number 3. The falconry display and feast at Luxembourg. Stepping back in time to 1627, the reign of Emperor Ferdinand II, we witness a different kind of extravagant hunting party, one that harked back to ancient traditions and decayed a different form of mastery over the animal kingdom. The Imperial falconry display, while not involving gunpowder or mass slaughter, these events were equally grand, demanding immense skill, patience, and considerable resources, often culminating in an outdoor feast that redefined opulence. Luxembourg, with its historic castles and sprawling parks, was a favored location for these displays. It was here that the Imperial Mews, the specialized facilities for training and housing the Emperor's hundreds of falcons, hawks, and other birds of prey, were located. The upkeep of these birds, their trainers, known as falconers, and their specialized equipment was an enormous expense. Each bird was a precious commodity, often costing more than a warhorse. Some of these birds were gifts from distant lands, others bred specifically for their hunting prowess. The preparations for a grand falconry display were meticulous. Gamekeepers would ensure a healthy population of suitable prey birds, such as herons, cranes, ducks, and sometimes even smaller game like partridges and rabbits, were present in the area. The Imperial falconers, Highly skilled professionals whose knowledge was passed down through generations would spend months, sometimes years, training the birds for specific maneuvers, ensuring they would perform flawlessly for the emperor and his guests. The display was as much about pouting the bird's training and the falconer's expertise as it was about the actual catch. On the chosen day, the Lanzenkirchen estate would transform into a living theater. Carriages arrived, bringing the court in their finest Renaissance-era attire. Ladies in voluminous gowns with intricate embroidery. Gentlemen in feathered hats and velvet doublets. Unlike the raw energy of a boar hunt, this was a more contemplative and artistic form of hunting, a demonstration of human partnership with a wild creature. Emperor Ferdinand II, known for his fervent Catholic devotion and his love of art and spectacle, would typically open the proceedings. He would be accompanied by his most favored guests, often including foreign ambassadors eager to witness this unique form of imperial entertainment. The imperial falconers, dressed in their distinctive uniforms, would stand ready, their magnificent birds perched on their gloved fists, hooded and quiet, awaiting their moment. The display would begin with the ceremonial unhooding of the birds. A majestic peregrine falcon or a powerful gyrfalcon would suddenly be revealed, its sharp eyes scanning the sky. Then, with a flourish, the falconer would release the bird. The falcon would launch into the air, ascending rapidly, its wings cutting through the air with astonishing speed and grace. This was often the moment when a heron or crane, specifically flushed from a nearby pond or marsh, would take flight. The ensuing aerial ballet was breathtaking. The falcon, with its incredible eyesight and speed, would pursue its quarry with relentless precision. Spectators would watch, craning their necks as the two birds engaged in a deadly dance across the sky. The skill of the falconers was evident in their ability to call back their birds or to encourage them, using subtle hand signals and specialized lures. The hunt might involve multiple birds, sometimes working in concert, or various types of raptors, each specialized for different prey. According to descriptions found in the court correspondence of Johann von Khevenholler, the emperor himself would often participate, perhaps releasing a bird or calling one back, demonstrating his personal connection to this ancient sport. The beauty of the landscape, with the historic castles as a backdrop, and the wide open sky enhanced the majesty of the aerial spectacle. While kills certainly happened, often with a swift dive and a powerful strike, the emphasis was on the elegance of the pursuit and the skill involved, not simply the body count. After a series of such magnificent displays, the focus shifted to the grand outdoor feast. This was where the extravagance truly shone. Unlike indoor banquets, an outdoor feast required immense logistical planning. Long tables, often stretching for hundreds of feet, were set up under temporary canopies, or in specially designated clearings within the meticulously maintained gardens of Luxembourg. These tables were not simply functional, they were artistic arrangements, adorned with fresh flowers, silver candelabras, and sculpted ice figures. The food was a marvel of culinary artistry. Roasting spits would be set up nearby, turning entire oxen or wild boars over open flames, filling the air with savory aromas. Servants dressed in lavish livery moved through the crowd, offering platters piled high with roasted game, including the birds caught during the display, freshwater fish, exotic fruits, and an endless array of pastries and sweet confections. The sheer scale of the catering was staggering, designed to feed hundreds of guests in style. Musicians played lively tunes from elevated platforms, their melodies mingling with the laughter and chatter of the feasting nobles. Jugglers and acrobats might perform, and sometimes even a small theatrical production would be staged. The setting sun would cast a warm golden glow over the scene, transitioning into a magical atmosphere as hundreds of lanterns and torches were lit, illuminating the entire spectacle. The purpose of such a feast went beyond mere sustenance. It was a potent display of imperial hospitality, a demonstration of the emperor's boundless wealth and his ability to command resources. It was a social occasion of the highest order, allowing nobles to interact, alliances to be strengthened, and the power of the Habsburg court to be broadcast to all attendees, particularly the foreign ambassadors. The falconry display and feast at Lanzenkirchen under Ferdinand II was a testament to the enduring power of tradition and the Habsburgs' commitment to grand spectacle. It demonstrated a different facet of their hunting passion, one that was perhaps more refined and ancient, but no less extravagant. It was a powerful assertion of imperial authority, touting their mastery over the skies and their ability to turn even the simple act of eating into an unforgettable, opulent event. Number 2. The artificial deer park and shooting party. As the 18th century drew to a close, the Age of Enlightenment began to cast its intellectual light even on the rigid traditions of the Habsburg court. Emperor Joseph II, son of Maria Theresia, was a monarch known for his reforms and his desire for efficiency. Yet even he indulged in extravagant hunting parties. His approach, however, often reflected his unique brand of enlightened despotism, controlled, efficient, and still immensely grand. One example was his creation of artificial deer parks and the subsequent shooting parties held within them. Joseph II, while a keen hunter, preferred a more organized approach than the chaotic mass drives of his predecessors. He believed in scientific management, even of wildlife. He ordered the creation of vast enclosed deer parks on imperial estates, such as the Lanes Game Preserve outside Vienna. These were not just fenced-off forests. They were meticulously planned ecosystems designed to optimize game populations. Specialized breeding programs ensured a constant supply of healthy red deer, roe deer, and other game animals. The land within these parks was managed with specific areas for feeding, breeding, and eventual hunting. The preparations for a shooting party within these artificial parks were about control and precision. Unlike hunts that relied on driving wild animals over vast distances, here the animals were already contained. The challenge became one of presentation and efficiency. Paths were widened, shooting stands were discreetly constructed, and viewing areas were prepared for guests who preferred to observe rather than actively participate. The logistical effort shifted from corralling wild nature to maintaining a perfect, controlled natural environment. On the day of the event, guests arrived not for a rough-and-tumble chase through untamed wilderness, but for a sophisticated outdoor gathering. The court's attire for these events, while still elegant, often leaned towards more practical, tailored designs reflecting Joseph's desire for functionality over pure ostentation, though luxury was never truly absent. Ladies might wear riding habits designed for comfort, while gentlemen sported sturdy yet finely made hunting coats. Emperor Joseph II, himself known for his earnest demeanor and his attempts to live a simpler, more rational life than some of his ancestors, would nonetheless preside over these events with imperial dignity. He understood that these gatherings served a crucial social and diplomatic function, even if he personally preferred a more direct, less theatrical hunt. The hunt itself was often a standing shoot. The deer, accustomed to the presence of humans within the park, would be gently guided rather than violently driven into designated clearings. Here, the hunters standing at predetermined positions would take aim. The focus was on accurate marksmanship and the swift, clean dispatch of the animals. There was less emphasis on the chase and more on the precise execution of the kill. According to records kept by the Imperial Forestry Office, the daily kill count could still be substantial, numbering in the hundreds of deer on particularly active days. Shouting the sheer density of game within these carefully managed enclosures, the atmosphere was perhaps less overtly dramatic than the torch-lit boar hunts, but equally impressive in its display of order and abundance. The sounds were those of precise gunshots, the rustling of leaves, and the quiet commands of the imperial gamekeepers. It was a demonstration of man's ability, not just to conquer nature, but to shape and optimize it for his own purposes. The artificial park was a living testament to Joseph II's enlightened ideals, applying rational principles to even the most traditional of royal pastimes. After the shooting concluded, the deer were carefully retrieved and prepared for the traditional streckelun, or laying out of the game. The killed animals, often arranged in neat rows according to species, would be presented to the emperor and his guests. A visual tally of the day's success. This formal presentation was a moment of reflection and a testament to the efficiency of the hunt. The subsequent feast was a lavish affair, but again with Joseph II's touch of practicality. While still abundant and exquisite, the food might emphasize fresh local produce from the imperial estates, reflecting a slightly more grounded approach to luxury. The banquet could be held in a large, elegant hunting lodge within the park, or in one of the palace's grand halls. The conversation would likely revolve around the day's successful shots, but also perhaps touch upon agricultural improvements or new administrative reforms, reflecting the emperor's broader interests. Musical performances, perhaps featuring more classical compositions, would accompany the meal. The evening would be a chance for networking and discussion, with the abundance of the hunt serving as a backdrop to serious imperial business and social interactions. The artificial deer park and shooting party under Joseph II represented a fascinating evolution of the Habsburg hunting tradition. It was still undeniably extravagant, consuming vast resources and promoting immense wealth and power, but it did so with a sense of order, efficiency, and a subtle nod to the scientific and rational principles that defined his reign. It demonstrated that even in the pursuit of leisure and sport, the Habsburgs remained masters of their domain, capable of bending nature to their will in a carefully controlled and impressive manner. Number 1. The royal shoot for dignitaries. In the mid-19th century, during the reign of Emperor Ferdinand I of Austria, a monarch who, despite his gentle nature, maintained the grand traditions of the Habsburg court, the concept of the hunting party reached its pinnacle as a tool of international diplomacy. The royal shoot for dignitaries was less about the thrill of the chase for the emperor himself, and more about creating an indelible impression of Habsburg power, wealth, and sophisticated generosity for visiting heads of state, princes, and high-ranking ambassadors. These events were orchestrated with a precision that bordered on military strategy. Months in advance, the Imperial Court Directorate, in conjunction with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, would begin planning. The guest list was meticulously curated, including only the most important foreign figures, whose impressions of the Habsburg Empire mattered most. The chosen location would often be a particularly scenic and well-stocked imperial hunting ground, such as those near the Bohemian border or in Lower Austria, ensuring both natural beauty and an abundance of game. Hundreds of gamekeepers, foresters, cooks, servants, musicians, and security details were mobilized. Special trains were chartered to transport guests in their extensive entourages from Vienna to the chosen hunting lodge or specially constructed temporary residences. These lodges were refurbished to unparalleled standards, ensuring every comfort and luxury was available. Bedrooms were appointed with the finest linens, rare silks, and antique furnishings. Bathrooms, still a novelty, for many were lavishly equipped. The game itself was managed to an extreme degree. For weeks before, the shoot beaters would subtly herd vast numbers of animals: deer, wild boar, pheasants, hares, into specific areas of the forest, ensuring a guaranteed abundance of targets. Sometimes, particularly for bird shoots, thousands of pheasants or partridges would be bred and released specifically for the event, ensuring a constant supply of flying targets. Records from the imperial household accounts of the era show staggering budgets allocated for these guest hunts, far exceeding the costs of even the emperor's personal excursions. On the appointed day, the arriving dignitaries were greeted with a spectacle of pomp and ceremony. Carriages, some pulled by teams of 6 white Lipizzaner horses, others by sleek black Hungarian steeds, brought the guests to the hunting grounds. Imperial guards in immaculate uniforms stood at attention. A military band might play national anthems or a festive march. The air was thick with the scent of pine, gunpowder from demonstration shots. and the subtle perfume of expensive attire. Emperor Ferdinand I, or a designated high-ranking archduke acting as his representative, would personally greet each guest with elaborate courtesy. The language spoken varied, depending on the guest, highlighting the multicultural nature of the Habsburg Empire, with interpreters always at hand. The primary goal was to make each foreign dignitary feel exceptionally honored and welcome. The actual hunt was designed to be effortless for the guests. Unlike earlier, more challenging hunts, this was about providing maximum shooting opportunities with minimal exertion. Guests were often stationed at comfortable elevated shooting blinds from which game would be driven directly towards them by hundreds of beaters. For bird shoots, the air would literally be filled with pheasants or partridges, allowing for continuous firing. Loaders dressed in smart livery would stand by, ensuring the guests' multiple shotguns were always ready, taking away the need for any pause. The sheer volume of animals killed was astounding, though often kept discreetly out of immediate view of the guests, to maintain a veneer of gentlemanly sport. Thousands of birds and hundreds of larger game animals could be dispatched in a single day. The focus was on the entertainment and the success of the guests. A foreign prince who had never hunted before would find himself tallying an impressive bag, a clear demonstration of Habsburg generosity and the abundance of their lands. Reports from British ambassadors, often wary of continental displays, sometimes expressed genuine astonishment at the scale of these shoots. Midday, an elaborate hunt breakfast would be served outdoors, perhaps in a specially erected tent or a decorated clearing. The menu was designed to impress: cold roasted meats, fresh game terrines, an array of cheeses, fresh bread, and an endless supply of fine wines and spirits. Servants hovered, anticipating every need. Conversation flowed easily, facilitated by the shared excitement of the shoot and the relaxed atmosphere. The end of the day culminated in a ceremonial curry, where the day's kill, cleaned and meticulously arranged by species, would be presented. This was a moment of pride for the hosts, and a visual testament to the success of the hunt. Then a grand banquet awaited the guests in the hunting lodge. The evening banquet was a masterpiece of culinary art and courtly entertainment. The dining halls were adorned with fresh flowers, crystal chandeliers and silverware gleaming under candlelight. Multiple courses each, a work of art, were served on porcelain bearing the imperial crest. Rare wines from the emperor's private cellars flowed. Between courses, musical performances, perhaps featuring the imperial court opera singers or a full orchestra, entertained the guests. Toasts were raised to the emperor, to the visiting dignitaries, and to the enduring friendship between nations. The royal shoot for dignitaries under Emperor Ferdinand I was far more than a hunt. It was a carefully choreographed diplomatic event, a grand theatrical production designed to project Habsburg power, prosperity, and unparalleled hospitality onto the international stage. It demonstrated that the empire possessed not only vast lands and countless resources, but also the organizational genius and boundless generosity to host the world's elite in a style that was truly unforgettable. It was a testament to the fact that even in the seemingly simple act of a hunting party, the Habsburgs solidified their imperial legacy.